of Dissecting Horror, your virtual panel series from us here at Dread Central and Projection PR. I've been doing these for about a year now, so those of you who have tuned in before know at Dissecting Horror, we like to get into the nitty-gritty of today's best, most interesting films in the horror space and talk to the most talented creators within the horror space. Now, usually when we all convene, we're talking about a specific film, and I'll have usually the writer, director, members of the cast, then perhaps a production designer or a composer or something like that. This is different because tonight we're doing a panel focused on filmmaking and specifically virtual effects. So in the past, we did a panel that was all about stunts. We've done panels about production design. Tonight, it's all about virtual effects. And I'm very lucky to have with me some very crafty apes. That's kind of a joke because they all work for the VFX company Crafty Apes. And we're very excited to have them here. So let me introduce y'all to everyone we've got here. First of all, we've got Chris LeDoux. How are you, sir?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great. Chris, you're the co-founder of Crafty Apes. You're the senior VFX supervisor. Some projects you've worked on recently, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, The Starling, Vacation Friends, Hidden Figures, Jumanji, A Wrinkle in Time, superhero movies, tons of stuff. But we're really excited to talk about Fear Street. I know that we're going to get into talking about Fear Street because it really took all of us in the horror space by storm this year. And I know we've even got some footage to share, really kind of demonstrating what you guys contributed. So thank you for being here. Really excited to have you.
Oh, awesome to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right on, right on. We're also joined by Leslie Chung. How are you, Leslie?
Hi, doing great.
Fantastic. You're the the VFX supervisor and producer. You've worked on Star Trek Discovery, Manifest Season 3, The Night House, which I'm excited to talk about. I haven't seen, but it's gotten a lot of great reviews, and some of the stuff you were talking about during Tech Check has me especially curious about this negative space man you speak of. Also Runaways, Deadpool 2, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So we're just super excited to have you here from your nice wooden cabin in New York.
Happy to be here. Where it's
awesome.
Being really hard outside.
Oh, nice. Adds to the ambiance of it all. Also joining us, we've got Steve DiNozzi. How are you, Steve?
Hey, how you doing? Fantastic.
The VFX supervisor of Crafty Apes. Worked on Darkest Minds, American Gods, which we love. Stranger Things season 2, for which you were nominated for an Emmy. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you were also part of the Fear Street team. So, really excited to talk about that and what you're doing there. So thank you so much for joining us. Last, certainly not least, is Matt Akey. How are you, sir?
Hey, how's it going, Josh?
I'm doing great. Really stoked to have you guys here. You're the VFX executive producer. Your bio for our panel was a little different than your peers, so I know that you've got some cool pets. I'm excited to talk to you about that. I know that you were pretty popular for playing basketball in high school, where they called you the Mad Bomber for your wicked three-pointer.
Right.
I know that you're into community theater, all that's interesting. I know that you also worked recently on Things Seen and Heard, creepy Southern Rural Gothic on Netflix that a lot of folks have been talking about, so excited to talk to you about that too. So that's everyone. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for coming to represent your company, Crafty Apes. Let's dive right in, shall we?
I got to say, Josh, Steve was nominated for an Emmy, but Leslie just literally won an Emmy 2 days ago.
Fantastic. And how did I miss that fact? Congratulations, Leslie. What did you win your Emmy for?
For outstanding special visual effects on Star Trek Discovery, on a single episode of Star Trek Discovery. Season 3.
Congratulations. I really love, that's one of my favorite spin-offs that they've ever done, right next to, Next Generation, Star Trek Discovery is just really fantastic. So well deserved on that. That's just fantastic. What a great way to kick off the panel with just some positive news and celebrating your achievement. So we're here to talk about VFX. And I thought that it'd be cool to kind of start with kind of explaining what that means, especially in this day and age. You know, everyone knows what practical effects are because we've had practical effects in the form of props since the dawn of storytelling, before we had stages and cameras and everything. VFX, you know, the term didn't even come into popular use until maybe a few decades ago. And I think initially, you know, when people talk about VFX, especially versus practical effects, we're kind of stuck in that 90s era, early 2000s era, films like the live action Spawn movie, where the VFX famously did not meet the standards of the actors and the stories. I think things are really different now. But, you know, for starters, can we just kind of talk about what VFX means? You know, is it just anything done to the film after filming? What are the tools of your trade, and how have VFX evolved over the past couple decades? You know, simple. Who wants to start?
Chris is itching to start on this.
I mean, I'm trying to think. With Leslie's been around for a couple decades, like actually, you know, alive for a couple decades. I was thinking about that. No, go for it, Steve.
Well, let's see, visual effects. Yeah, I'm not too in terms with the history and all that, but obviously, it's used so widely, all these movies and TV shows now, and a lot of people like to point out the things that stand out the most. I mean, you look at your like Transformers and all those kind of movies with this big poppy CG stuff going on, but believe it or not, there's visual effects in like pretty much everything that's shot. You know, there's, especially in this day and age with all the COVID stuff, that you know, they can't get to certain sets, and it's usually cheaper just to shoot it on virtual stages, where you can really control the environment and do a lot of stuff in post. We've done, you know, if we like take away from the horror genre, we just go to any genre. I mean, we've done stuff for Dolly Parton that was, you know, at first glances, you don't really think of it as visual effects, as a Dolly Parton movie or some Tyler Perry thing. But believe it or not, there's like a lot of stuff going involved into that, where it's like, you know, makeup fixes. So, you know, wig line fixes, a lot of beauty work being done, set design, set extensions. So you got the whole fantastical world, and you also have a very realistic world where it's stuff that you don't realize, because if you did realize it, then, you know, we're not doing our job right. So we try to hide it as most invisible as we can. But I'll let Chris go into the history here. I know he's a pro.
No, I mean, really, visual effects, you know, VFX, it delineates from special effects, and it's anything that tends to happen, you know, digitally. Special effects is practical, and, you know, our work involves, you know, computers. I mean, you could argue that it's anything that happens in post to an extent, you know, and then people used to scratch on negatives, you know, manually. Was that visual effects? I mean, I guess you could call it the birth of it in the most analog form, but nowadays we think of it as, you know, everything that can be done digitally in the computer. And it can be done pre-viz, before we film, you know, during filming, doing post-viz, mock-ups, and happen afterwards. And Steve's correct. It has now encompassed a larger definition than ever before. It used to be like, you know, hey, I need you know, the very first digital effect, you know, is I think young Sherlock Holmes is considered the first one ever. You know, when the stained glass guy jumps out and he's this two-dimensional creature. But, you know, it's, you know, you go back to Star Wars, and, you know, they're drawing blaster fire on the nags and stuff like that. So that's, you know, more the analog. Now it's really all digital, and it's gone from there, you know, to like obvious things. You know, it's, you know, if you're doing The Hobbit and you're doing Smog, I mean, the audience knows that, you know, no one's flying around on a dragon, in theory. But the you know, now it encompasses everything from invisible effects, where we're helping out production design, or, you know, helping out things, you know, in wardrobe or hair that didn't work out, especially given such high resolution. You know, people are capturing stuff at 8K, you know, delivering in 4K finals, and it's revealing a lot more than ever before. What used to be a blurry background is now like, you know, a grip and a teamster, like, you know, smoking cigarettes in the background. You might have gotten away with it 30 years ago, and now it's different. So yeah, in a lot of ways, we've become story drivers and allowed the filmmakers to tell more complete and ever expansive stories. But in a lot of ways, we're also an insurance policy. I mean, the amount of stuff we can do in post, and it's very common now to do what we call splits, where it's like, oh, I like the performance of this take and the performance of this take over here, these characters, let's put them together. And now with machine learning, artificial intelligence, you're seeing stuff where they can make people say things that they had never said, moving their mouth a certain way, and it's pretty incredible. So it's used, like Leslie on Star Trek. I mean, that's an obvious use for it for that world, but a lot of we'll spend a lot of our time too on movies that are just very character-driven dramas where you never think, oh, there's a lot of VFX in there. And nowadays, the average movie has like 200 to 300 shots, and you just never expect it.
It's true. I mean, it's really mind expanding to hear you guys talk about that aspect of it, because exactly like Steve said, you're used to seeing, when you talk about VFX, you instantly think spaceships and giants and things like that, but people don't realize that it's also hair and lip movements and things like that. So it is interesting, and it is enlightening to hear that it's becoming so widely used for cleanup essentially. So that's something I think people don't realize, because you get a lot of hardcore horror fans who have a knee-jerk aversion to VFX, but you're kind of explaining about how it really smooths everything out in some ways, and that can only enhance whatever practical effects are there or whatever truly exists on film. So that's really neat. I'm interested in hearing kind of how you all got involved with Crafty Apes. Chris, you're one of the co-founders, yeah?
Yeah, we me and my brother Tim LeDoux, and then my producer Jason Sanford. I had known Tim all my life, and we were both at separate companies at the time. And then I had known Jason for 5 years or so. This is back in 2010. We were all in Los Angeles together, and we got to talking, and we liked the places we were at, but we started thinking about what would it be like to have an artist-driven VFX company and really take that point of view on it. And the places we had been that had been artist-driven all felt really good to work at, and we wanted to take a stab at it and see what happens. So we very humble beginnings in a 150-foot rent office in Venice on Washington Boulevard, and now it's 7 locations and 300 something people. And I moved out to Atlanta in 2014. And along the way, we've met, great people like Leslie, who's ran New York for a while, really has been the most consistent piece of it. Is now, our best person, up there. And she's having meeting people like her along the way, that you feel good about and drive with. Because when you're in the trenches as an artist at other companies, you start, just in the back of your head, it's percolating who you'd want to work with and not want to work with and things like that. So we've been very fortunate with the group we've had. I mean, and then the federal government paid us to take on Steve because Steve's got problems, and we've been, luckily he doesn't cause too many issues. But we met Matt Akey here in Atlanta as well, and you never know where you're going to meet really good talent. And I mean, to be honest, I mean, Steve's might be he's one of the top 3 artists at the company, and he's when you met him, you wouldn't he was just some guy addicted to playing Smite all the time, and you just wouldn't have known it. And so it's been a gradual build over about 10 years now.
Thank you, Chris. Okay. Oh yeah, I always got I let Chris give it all to me, and I just take it. Yeah, it's great. I started with I was actually finishing up a year and a half or 2 years at another company, and I was constantly getting some pings from another person that worked at Crafty Apes, was another supervisor. It was, hey, are you done yet? Because I kept saying, no, I still have a contract with another company. I was working on a Adult Swim show called Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell, and that was it was a very fun show to work on, but very in a way not too rewarding, just because the work was so had to be cheesy for the reason, they wanted the comedy factor of it and all that. So we were forced to do really quick bad looking stuff. And after a year or two, they kind of got to me. But finally, I made the switch to Crafty Apes, and from there, it's only been a very exponentially quick moving upwards hill of just doing a good job. Met all these cool people, great bosses, great company, and yeah, we're just keeping it going. About 6 years now with this company, so very happy where I'm at. I've been in Atlanta since 2010, and hopefully I could stay until I retire at the age of 85.
Yeah, I was a native of Southern California. I worked in animation first, right out of college for writer director out there. Steve Odekirk was his name, and I worked on Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. It was my first sort of visual effects heavy in terms of all CG project. This is back in like 99, 2000 ish, and we also worked on this little thing called Thumb Wars. If you've ever seen this or heard of this, this is where we shot thumbs on very elaborate, way too expensive sets, and then shot faces of talent, and then basically composited the eyes and mouths on these little thumb bodies, and then did movie parodies that Steve wrote with those. And it was pretty fun. They kind of took off, and we made about 6 of them, Franken Thumb and the Bat Thumb, and a bunch of them at the time, which were great. Really good voice talent. The guy that was the brain from Pinky and the Brain was one of our main actors in all these things. And so we did those, and I was kind of introduced to compositing and also to 3D at the time, in terms of just a part of filmmaking that I had never known about. And I worked for Steve for about 7 years over the course of 2 big stints there. I worked on The Barnyard for Nickelodeon. So my introduction to visual effects was mostly through all CG projects with a little bit of compositing work that he did. Then did the festival circuit, writing and directing short films for a bit. Took a break from the industry for about 4 years, had kids and bought a home, and kind of got very bored with not being in the industry. Even though the family stuff was fun, it was like the itch came back, and went back into it and worked in 3D conversion for about 5 or 6 years, and some visual effects and virtual reality work, VR. And then moved out to Atlanta. Was talking about a job over at Pinewood when I met Chris, and we realized we were bidding on some of the same movies, and it was like, hey, let's join forces and drink some whiskey and kick ass in Atlanta and become the one game in town over here. So it's been a lot of fun, because kind of to Chris's point, a lot of people stick around and stay at Crafty because they just enjoy the people. There's a lot of friendships, a lot of people that hang out off time and do Vegas trips together, and do awesome horror panels together and that kind of thing. So it's a great group of people, and the kind of people you'd want to chill with on a Friday night, not just be in the trenches with, even though we are every day with how busy things are in our industry right now. But that's kind of the quick snapshot of it. But yeah, love what we do, and probably my favorite project I ever got to work on was Hugo, which was sort of a mix of some 3D conversion, some 3D animation work, some colorization, some digital restoration of old Millier footage that needed to be scanned, and kind of got to put all those pieces together and work on something that was pretty awesome with Scorsese, which was a great filmmaker to work with. And did that a few years ago, and it was funny. I didn't know that Tim LeDoux worked on that as well as one of the head soups over at his company. But coming here, I've gotten the chance to work on every kind of stuff, painting out blemishes on actresses all the way up to blowing up cities and movies. And so it's a great sort of just really diverse sort of experience with the kind of people we work with, and the kind of films and TV shows that we work on, and as well as just this year getting into the commercial division, launching a sort of a whole branch of the company to work on short form stuff. So sky's the limit. We're having a lot of fun, and yeah, it's kind of the snapshot.
Well, let's see. I think my journey started with just meeting a mutual friend of ours at another VFX studio. I feel like a lot of these connections always kind of come back to who you worked with in the trenches. And a mutual friend of ours was somebody I'd worked with for a long time at another company, and eventually came to work for Chris as they built Crafty Apes Atlanta. And so when I guess their eyes turned to New York City, that's when I was contacted as somebody to start build that company here. I think Star Trek was the show that we launched with here in New York City, And from there, I've just found myself being able to take part in a pretty cool array of really creative work. So for me, I've been able to like pull on, I guess, everything that I've liked as a hobby. I got started in visual effects because I wanted to be a 2D Disney animator when I was a kid. I had all those classic Disney movies on VHS and dreamed of doing something with art. And then I think right around when I needed to figure out where I was going to go to college or what I was going to major in, they said they were never going to do any more 2D animated movies ever again. So I figured I might as well turn to computers because, a kid at the time had plenty of time to play video games. And that was kind of my inspiration to move forward in visual effects. And it's been pretty fun here at Crafty because the array of projects that we get allows me to, I guess, take every bit of art that I found inspiring or any hobby that I've indulged in visual effects and actually like try to utilize that to get the creative direction going on shows that I'm on, whether it be like as a shot or, and something fancy to convince the client is going to look cool on the show that we're working on.
I mean, I kind of, for me, I feel lucky. I've always been interested in this, and so it's sort of, I kind of do it when I'm not doing it. And there's whatever latest thing has sort of caught my eye. Like lately, it's been machine learning. So if there's a project to attach it to, I have something to actually solve a problem with it, because that's really what VFX is. That's why I've always found it interesting. Is it's a combination of the art and the technical, and the problem solving is really what makes it interesting. And that there's it's really not a big industry is the thing. So when you need to solve a problem, there's certain places you can go where a lot of times you have to kind of invent techniques to a degree. And that's what's really entertaining about it. You might, someone might need an effect and you're thinking, how do I approach this? The funny thing is we use practical a lot ourselves. A lot of times we're like, well, we could just film something and then comp it in. We're combining all these different techniques from practical to digital to, it could be, very diet version of AI or something like that. That's what's really interesting and it's changing constantly. So for me, I find everything that I find interesting about, storytelling, visual art in general, is very satiated in this realm. So I kind of just eat, sleep, and breathe, something along this when I'm not, even when I'm not there, I'm thinking about some problem to solve to a degree, which maybe I've just brainwashed myself. It's entirely possible, but I've kind of been thinking about this stuff for, I'm trying to think of life before this. And I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, oh yeah, I got high all the time. I forgot about that. Okay, never mind. And so I really, I feel lucky. To me, it's cliche, but it's not a job for me, at least. Cause when I'm not doing, I'm trying to, there's just so much out there, especially with, the rise of game engines and the convergence of artificial intelligence, video games and film. And, I think we're about to experience some things that are super interesting, and we're kind of in the middle of the beginning stages of that right now, where there's going to be a big shift happening, and the paradigm is going to move over. So for me, I'm very excited. I'm gonna hang out here. Well, hang out here until I'm 85 with Steve.
Steve, how about you? Are you still as inspired as you were the first day, or do you find yourself in the trenches sometimes, just trying to get the work done?
I feel pretty good, especially since I have a twin brother who has now been working at Crafty, I think, for 2 years or 1.5, 2 years, something like that. But he came out of the clothing industry, being a district manager for guest clothing. So he made a complete career switch. So he kind of, if I had a little bit of a downward slope of interest and all that, he definitely kept it strong, because he's in the same industry now, and he works with me, and that's been a great uplifting moment, having him around. But I always, like Chris said, I always been interested in this kind of work. My biggest inspirations was Lord of the Rings. I think after I watched the first, especially the first one, but the first 3 that came out, it was just something that, I was like, man, I want to do that. And at the time, I didn't know really what it was called. Like, what role do I take? I don't know. So I started with digital matte painting, and then from there, went to compositor. Now, I'm supervising. But from my day-to-day work, I think my favorite part of working is actually doing the work. I like being on the box and actually doing the compositing work. I like to teach people and help people out. I like to work on the hard shots or come up with templates and come up with looks. So I'm more of that kind of person who wants to get hands-on doing the stuff than like sitting and reviewing. I mean, reviewing is part of my job, but I don't like to sit there all day and just review stuff and kick it back and then, say, oh, I'm done for the day. Like, I don't feel successful unless I publish like a shot at least. Like, that's just my instinct, So I like doing the work a lot. And I think, most people at Crafty, like Chris knows, that's where I'm most valuable, I guess, like doing actual
I'm picturing
shots.
I'm picturing one of your matte paintings done in MS Paint. Like,
there are some embarrassing ones, but yeah, that was a good time.
I mean, I'd be happy too if I had my twin brother getting me coffee. I'm sure it'd be great.
Hey guys, I'm back. Can
Hey,
you all hear me?
Josh.
I was actually just doing my impression of the negative spaceman. Did that was no, I'm just kidding. Thank you so much to technical guy, Dread Central co-founder John Condit for stepping in and saving the day. I couldn't do this without you, brother.
No worries, dude. No worries.
All right. Well, yeah, it was one of those nightmare situations where my computer crashed, but I'm so glad that we were able to keep it going. I know that we have a clip of what you guys did on Fear Street. Have we played the clip yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, let's play that clip and then kind of deep dive. Now, in this clip, we got a really good look at what I called the throbbing tumor, but I guess you guys had another name for it at the production.
Yeah,
the Heart of Darkness. So, those who have seen Fear Street know what we're talking about, but there's also probably the best kill in the entire trilogy is also in this clip we've got for you. So as soon as you're ready, John.
I can only imagine which one that is.
Oh, I don't know. Fantastic. Now, what I love so much about that clip is it really shows like the different, I guess you can call them layers. I'm not in the industry, but the way you start with nothing and just piece by piece, everything from the colors to the textures to the insects is just like placed on top of it. It just really shows the depth of it all. It's really impressive for someone like me who has no idea how this stuff happens. It just seems like magic to me, plus the fact that I really did think you guys had this gross, throbbing, slimy prop. I didn't realize how much of that was something that you guys created. So kudos to y'all on that. Let's talk about the Fear Street trilogy since it was so important to horror fans. first of all, who did what on the clip we just saw? Oh, and the death, of course, is the head in the bread slicer. I mean, come on, we got to come back and talk about that once we talk a little bit about the Heart of Darkness.
Chris did it all, so go ahead, Chris.
I mean, no, I oversaw it on a broad level, whereas Steve was the guy who he's the one who got beat up on it and did about 500 versions, and then I'd occasionally come into his office and shake my head at him and walk away. And honestly, Steve did. That's almost all Steve. It's most projects Steve leaves at the end and I have to finish it, but this one he took it to the end, which was first and very impressive. So Steve, go for it.
Yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about the process.
Yeah, no, it was. We started with I think the first movie. We had the most shots. I think at one point we just had the first 100 shots in house, going with the first movie, and then we started getting the second movie and third. So it was all 3 movies being worked on at once, and we just knew that they were going to be shown consecutively, at a certain release date. So just a lot going on at once, a lot of pressure, but we also had a lot of time. But it wasn't just free time, it's kind of everything was stopped at one point with the virus stuff. But yeah, so as far as if we go back to the, talking about the clips, the Heart of Darkness, that's that tumor looking thing. The funny part of that is that they actually had on set a practical, you want to call it a stand-in, or it was pretty well done. I mean, it was pretty far along, like a full developed thing with mechanism, hydraulics in it.
They had a mechanical prop for reference.
Yeah, mechanical prop, yeah, for reference. But that was at first we were just only kind of talking about enhancing it, but it turned out, I guess, the director had a different vision after the fact, so she really didn't like it at all. So we had to go in there and pretty much replace it. So that turned into a lot more work than we thought. So anytime you see that, we didn't have any, usually you're gonna have a green screen or something so we can get some kind of extraction to put someone in front of it or interacting with it, get like a contact shadow, all that didn't exist. So a lot of it was just straight up roto, which means frame by frame, we're cutting this person out. And then we stick our CG acid in there, and that acid itself went through really months of development. So started with some reference concept art supplied from the client. And we started going into modeling of that and texturing, and is this supposed to be fully black? Do you want these like orange kind of sacks? We call them just sacks. And it was, I think the last thing we came up with was a 2-heart chamber system. So we would have a main chamber that pumps, pushes liquid into another chamber, which then pumps, and then everything kind of secretes out of it. The whole point was it's supposed to be live, dark, wet. It's just always secreting liquid. So there's a lot of just all these different things interacting. You have a model that's animated in this organic, fleshy way. Then you have liquid, which is always can be a complex situation because that has to interact. Then you have
it was hard to find reference for. The reference was really hard because there wasn't a lot like it.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that thing in Flash Gordon was like the closest thing.
Well, that's the thing, is like a lot of these horror movies too, it's just, everybody wants to be original. But when you look at reference, hey, give me this devil heart. Okay. Doesn't exist anywhere.
Right.
So the only reference you really have is maybe a book if lucky to have an illustration with it, or you look for another movie. So it's luckily, we worked on Stranger Things, so we can kind of pull some ideas from that, what was successful, and, kind of pitch that. And we all kind of talk and bounce ideas back and forth.
It's great to see it the way it turned out. It was really successful. It's like a metaphor for the curse itself. At its most primal, basic level. So really well done. And like I said too, I really want to hear a little bit about the head and the bread slicer. Was that something you guys read in the script and just like, what the fuck? What's this gonna be like?
Yeah, I remember seeing when we're going through the bidding file and just kind of watching it, and it's reference days, so very tempy visual effects done to it. But I was like, oh man, that's gonna be gruesome. especially when we saw the side thing where she goes in sideways and it's like a splurt. I'm okay, all right, yeah. And then we go cut down to the top down angle, and it was disgusting, but you know, that was probably one of the most complex shots because it's like doing something that close to camera and getting like one, you want to make sure they're readable. You know, it has to be that we noticed that hey, that's our girl on the bread slicer, you know, and then you know you have all this organicness to it, this soft body. So we actually went even full CG on that shot at first, and we actually pushed a CG model through and did all these special simulations to it to make it really look like it got chewed up by the bread slicer. And to me, it looked great. It looked like pieces of steak coming through, and the steak was just flopping over. So it looked great, but at the same time, it's you know, it didn't tell the story that they wanted. So they're like, well, we want to see her face. It needs to be more rigid. So then that's when we changed our approach, and we kind of did this somewhat simpler 3D solution, as well as a matte painting that we drew on and really tailored it to look like her head has been sliced up, and then we pushed that through. So at the end, it came out pretty sweet, and I think it had a good reaction for the audience.
I think so too. I mean, it must have been really fun for you guys to create these effects, knowing that the films were going to be rated R and that you didn't have to hold back.
Yeah, I think that was the most. Yeah, because in my head, you know, it's like Netflix. I've never seen something go like too far rated R, but like there were certain shots in here where it was kind of like pushing that boundary.
It sure reminded us.
Yeah. No, it was really fun. Yeah, and like I mean, even looking at reference, you know, because I want to get this to doesn't be physically accurate, but I want to get to look pretty real. So that's always an interesting part of this job, is that you have to go online and search things that you usually don't want to search for.
Right.
But I definitely developed a stomach for looking at blown up heads.
Nice. That's real job. It shows how far you're willing to go for your art. So it's definitely appreciated. Well, look, I got some questions for the audience. Here's one for Leslie. They want to talk about the Night House, which I'm excited to talk a little bit about, since, you know, I got some previews when we were in our tech check. Talk about your work on the film. And this person's curious if there's something in the film that audience are going to be surprised to learn was VFX and not real.
Let's see. I mean, I guess the negative spaceman himself would be the visual effect highlight of the movie, and the main character, I guess you could say. I don't know that there's anything that you would be surprised is VFX, but I think we did a really good job of really building off of the practical set that they made to create the silhouette of the man that was there. And so I think in this case, like, visual effects can get a little bit abstract as to what we had to do to get it there, which was kind of create our own performances of how that character would act and start to cut it out and form and meld the environment using visual effects to sell his shape and to sell his presence and to sell how scary he was without resorting to a jump scare. So I guess in a way it took a lot more than just manipulating the photos to look like something people had never seen before. It was figuring out a heavy performance. Figuring out a heavy performance with something that wasn't even directed really on set. This was all figured out after the fact, you know. So the director had this idea, it's just a feeling that he would describe and sometimes just act out on his own. And our job was to interpret that into some way that we could jostle the environment to show what he wanted.
That's really interesting that, you know, how he had to convey it like that, and how you guys were kind of able to reach into his mind and create something that you didn't really have a reference for. That's really exciting.
Yeah, and he have a reference for it too. You know, I do think it's a very cool thing for him to go into creating a story in a movie with this feeling of nothing. I think as he described it, you know, a lot of his direction was somewhat poetic and animated. But his whole thing about the movie was that this is a movie about a man from nothing, and in that nothing, there's just more nothing. I think was the initial pitch.
You wonder, like, how did they get, like, being an investor to like pitch this movie? That would make me so nervous. We don't know yet. You know, it's nothing, but we'll figure it out once we shoot it all.
I certainly didn't appreciate it until like we were really in there going, oh my God, what are we gonna make for this to hit his feelings? You know, I think that's certainly where being poetic is a very, very good talent, because the movie's a great concept, but you know, when you've got studio execs who just see dollar signs, how do you sell that? Especially when we were coming in after the fact to really design this character, like the other half of this character.
Well, thankfully they did give it the green light, because it gave you a chance to flex your muscles there. Just to talk a little bit, riffing off the fact that you just got that Emmy, what effects from Star Trek Discovery are you most proud of?
Oh, let's see. I think the stuff that I'm most proud of from that season is probably I think the transporter and the warp drive that we designed. You know, this was a really, really fun, pivotal season for us, because it was another chance again. You know, we started season 1 and designed all that with the clients for it, and then we got to do that almost all over again in season 3 as they leap forward, I think 1,000 years into the future, where all of the tech and all of the signature looks need to look the same. So again, I think I personally really like projects where they throw at me, just make it look cool, give us something that we've never seen before, which, you know, happened on the Night House. And then for, I think every major effect in Trek, it's usually give us something that we've never seen before. So for this,
Nice.
Let's take something that everybody's seen before and everyone's seen a lot of versions of, like the transporter, for instance, or what light speed looks like, and give us something you've never seen before, you know. And so I think, like what we did on the Night House, even that kind of effect, it just pulls on all of the influences and like maybe art references or just things that one has learned, maybe even through painting or at a museum you saw somewhere, just something weird or something odd that you can break the rules of what people are used to, and try to really meld that into the work that you're doing.
It's also, yeah, and it's a real testament to the confidence that you inspire in the you know, those you collaborate with, that they say, you know, go for it. You know, we want what your brain delivers. So yeah, that's fantastic. Congratulations on all of that. Matt, strong silent type. I'm not forgetting that you're here. Really glad that you're here. You recently worked on the Netflix film Things Seen and Heard, and we have a clip of that too, that shows not only the effect but some of the process that went into that. John, do you have that queued up? Let's see if we can play that for you guys. All right, fantastic. I mean, you know, it was short but very sweet. You know, the end result is amazing. You know, the little upside down cross coming out of the clouds, and just being able to see how you take something, you know, a moving image of the ocean, and you build something truly magical on top of it in a really seamless way. Tell us about that effect and more of the work you did on Things Seen and Heard.
Yeah, absolutely. We were really fortunate to get to work with Sherry Berman and Bob Pulcini, their husband and wife, team, who did American Splendor a few years ago, which got a lot of, you know, really good acclaim and reviews. You know, they had this story that was very sort of like a gothic horror story, ghost story, not, you know, kind of a modern day version in upstate New York, with this very interesting subculture of people, sort of this Hamptons community that loves to, you know, kind of study, you know, this oil painting art, the stuff that, you know, George Ines was one of these artists that I guess a lot of people really respect and might collect his original artwork and discuss them up there. So this horror movie sort of takes place with this art community, this couple that moves into this house that sort of has this haunting. The husband works at a university, studies art, paintings with these other, you know, people that they kind of meet. And then as you get going, you sort of realize very sort of MC Escher-esque, like, the illusion is sort of his reality, and kind of he's trapped in his own nightmare and ultimately is judged for his own sins within the art kind of reality that he likes to study and teach other students about, and ultimately ends up kind of damned and trapped in. So that last painting image of the upside down cross and that breakdown, they had this great vision coming in even during the early stages, going, hey, there's this one painting that is ultimately going to be this guy's hell. And it's kind of a flip on its ear of Inez's original painting. It's very famous, called The Valley of the Shadow of Death. It has this guy coming through these mountains, and this terrible storm, and he sees this lit cross kind of in the sky out in the distance as sort of his hope, right? So not to be spoiler alert for things you're going to see, but ultimately we find out that the husband in the film has committed a pretty big act against his family, against his wife. And then ultimately, as he's sailing out, we kind of pan out and we realize he's actually trapped in and becomes sort of the damned version of this painting, where the cross is upside down, hell's kind of surrounded him and trapped him inside the painting. And then we pull back and realize that's actually hanging in the offices of one of the people that he knew and kind of was suspicious of him. So pretty creepy. Directors are amazing with tone, just very kind of eerie tone, long takes, let the camera just run and let performers do their thing. And, they really came in and said, hey, there's a few big moments we want your guys' help with. This ghost in the seance scene, when we get a reveal of the haunted ghost to, kind of have her creeping around the house. We want her to look different than just some of the typical ghosts we've seen. And then obviously this hellstorm painting at the end, which Chris actually souped it and worked real close with them on kind of developing how that would sort of evolve without it just being like boom in one shot. It had this sort of evolution across this like 45-second at the end of the scene at the end of the movie that kind of got to that place where it finally froze into the oil painting. So we were thrilled with the final result. It feels like an artsy film. It feels like, a higher budget horror film kind of mixed. It's got elements of both, with the sophistication and the way they shot it, and good performances. And it's on Netflix. Definitely worth checking out. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. See it on Netflix now. We're talking about things seen and heard. Love it. Fantastic. Love the way that, so much subtext in such a small sustained image and shot. So really fantastic, really fantastic. So someone in the comments section, I guess, been looking at Crafty Apes' resume and noticed that you guys worked on Midsommar, Ari Aster's follow-up to Hereditary. What'd you guys do on that?
That's you, Leslie.
I was on it for part of it, but I remember, so I was doing work on that as an artist, as I think I was in between shows at the time. So we did quite a lot of work on, I believe there was the orgy scene. I don't recall what the actual work on that was, but it was on a lot of people's monitors.
There's a lot of painting out of junk and that.
There was all the smoke simulations too for the car.
And then yes, I was going to say the ones that I did work on was the smoke simulation. So sitting there on what's the sea of monitors with I think the wrinkles being painted out of the orgy scene were a number of smoke smoke additions for a car work there, and then there was I forget, I actually hadn't seen the movie yet myself, but this girl spewing some very black, like dreadful smoke into the view of the camera.
Yeah, all the smoke simulation stuff and then some environment enhancements of the sort of the grounds where the ceremonies take place were on our original scope of work that we sort of came in and helped Ari out with. And then he actually got asked when the film took off and did really well to do a director's cut version. And so he added about 12 minutes to it, and one of those sections he added was the like a way extended version of the orgy scene. So it was funny because it was like, okay, all this over here we want to show more than what's actually there in the photography, and all this over here we want to show a little less and block it with some hay and some other things. And it was sort of a like Leslie said, there was a lot of artists with a lot of very odd sort of grotesque images of all sorts of things on screens for about 3 weeks there. But
fascinating.
Yeah, it was interesting. He's a cool guy to work with, though. Very, very collaborative and very way into the VFX process as a tool to tell the story. So he was cool.
Fantastic.
I didn't work on it, but I remember I like to browse around in our system and just see what people are doing. And I just remember looking through shots from it because I didn't know what it was at first. Like, oh, this looks interesting, and saw a bunch of nude grandmas like humping stuff. So I was like, nope. Close that.
Such a nice way to say you creep around and silently judge. It's like,
good luck. No,
Inspired. Making sure, stuff's up to snuff.
Where does this note come from? Oh, it's Steve at 4 a.m. Oh, great.
I never leave a note though.
You guys all have a really great chemistry, and I can tell that that probably lends itself to the work you're able to do. And you just got a tremendous comment on Twitch. Someone named Perfecto says that your guys' work is fantastic, but your company culture is wonderful. And I think that's a great thing to hear about you guys, that you have a great company culture. You guys want to talk a little bit about what sets Crafty Apes apart from other VFX companies?
I mean, I think if we were a band, Steve would be playing the maracas. He's definitely a maraca guy. No, I mean, I think we're led by artists. The people that are, at the highest heights have artist backgrounds and are still on the box and still working. And so it sounds kind of crazy to do that, but we, a lot of times we'll do the work ourselves versus asking people to stay overtime and work a ton of weekends and things like that. And we realize when you're asking someone to stay late and work, or, a lot of times there's last second changes, and someone comes to you at 6 o'clock and like, hey, by the way, could you, fill out this TPS report or whatever? We know what we're asking. We know if it's how painful it is and this and that. And so, I think, there's a lot of cliches and memes in VFX, and, I think we're aware that you can't solve a lot of problems with the pizza party. And so, although it works for Steve, I think, you have to, pay people properly and understand that this is just one facet of their lives. And don't, the knock on VFX is that it takes too many hours and tends to be, life consuming. And so we put a lot of effort into making sure it's not life consuming, that it's one part of a balanced life is the idea. And we don't want it to just dominate, people's existences. And it can be a lot of fun as long as, it doesn't become abusive. And so we put a lot of effort into coming at things from that point of view. Despite Matt Akey's best efforts to get everyone to work 80 hours a week, it's there's people there to stem the tide. And it does put a lot of the pressure switches a lot from artist over to management. So Leslie, Akey, Steve, myself, a lot of the pressure does we'll roll into management to make sure that we're keeping people's lives intact. And there will be overtime. There'll be projects that are just they're asking for too much and too little time, and we said, okay, we'll do it, but we try to make sure people going into it, the artists are aware what they're going into and they feel good about it. We try to give people as many choices as possible. And I think that does set us apart.
Real quick,
Yeah.
Do you want to throw on there real quick about the last episode of Pandora?
Last episode of Pan.
Where you're like, hey, I need your brother. You have 2 days to do about 300 spacious shots.
Yeah, but I bought you a pizza afterwards.
Well, that's really inspiring to hear that you guys take on a lot of that pressure that might normally trickle down. So it sounds like you guys really do have it together. I can see why people would think that you'd be a wonderful company to work for. Leslie, it's kind of hard to ignore the fact that, we've got you and then we've got 4 guys with beards on here talking to you. Is this kind of representational of the VFX industry in general? Are there more men than women and people of color? And, do you think Crafty Apes is on the forefront of making a difference there?
I'd say, I guess I'm pretty used to this environment. It is true that, VFX tends to be pretty male dominated by men with beards, and I certainly stand out from that because I never really wear my beard anymore. But
looks good.
Yeah, I know it's a good look, but then, I don't look like normal woman. But I think the industry is slowly getting a lot more diverse. I feel like, I've been doing this for almost 12 years now, I think, maybe a little bit longer. And the crew has changed. I think I'm probably still in the minority, but at least those numbers have started to grow more. And I do think Crafty has been one of the more diverse places I've worked, probably because I helped staff it that way, at least here in the New York office. But I guess I too also have a sibling who works at the company, so that helps in the Asian female numbers there. But, you know, first and foremost, none of the people that are here I would ever want to work with if they didn't actually, you know, be able to do the work. So diversity aside, it still comes to, I think, you know, whether or not you can do the job and whether or not you can all gel. And I think thankfully there is quite a lot of us now from all sorts of backgrounds that can contribute to that. You know, I think most of the time growing up in this industry, it really has just been me amongst all the other men. But I can't say that it hasn't been fun to shoot the shit with everybody, you know, and everybody does kind of develop like a really interesting cultural language when you're working really, really late at night in a smelly room. But I think it also evens out the playing field for everyone because we're all under the same gun. And it really just comes, can you do the shot?
Very, very well said. Very well said. Well, look, we're nearing our last 5 minutes, and I feel like this has been a short episode since I had to take my little unplanned break for about 10 minutes there. But I'm so glad to have had, you know, this team from Crafty Apes here. And before I let any of you go, I do kind of want to go around, and I just want to hear what you're most proud of that you've done in your entire time working with Crafty Apes, and tell us a little bit about what you're working on next or what you're excited about. And why don't we start with you, Matt, Mr. Quiet Man?
I know Steve DiNozzi just takes the mic and just runs with it, so I have to try to get a word in here and there. For me, Dear Evan Hansen, we just finished up, worked out in New York. I love theater. My family loves theater. My kids act, and I used to direct theater back in the day. And like you know, when we got the chance to do the adaptation of Dear Evan Hansen for film for Universal, it was one I just was excited to be involved with, even more than just bringing the movie in, but actually to work on it as a producer. So, you know, Steven Chbosky, who directed Wonder, is the director on it. Very much not a sort of a Dread Central kind of film, right? It's a you know, teen drama musical kind of thing. But if you've ever seen the play or know the story, it's actually really great. It's kind of everybody's journey through high school and everything that they fear, everything that they're horrified about social cues and norms and peer pressure and cliques, and but it just does it in a way that just feels fresh, and the film's beautiful. It's a really, really good movie. It comes out in a couple weeks, and we had a great opportunity to really support with visual effects across different portions of the film. So I'd say that's my favorite one at the moment.
Fantastic. Can't wait to check it out, and thanks again for being part of our panel tonight. Leslie, how about you? What are you most proud of, and what are you either working on now or looking forward to?
I guess I'd say I'm most proud of the team that we've been able to build here in New York. You know, all of these projects are always really, really challenging. And I guess the thing that stresses me out the most is how are we going to get it done? And it's been putting together the pieces of the puzzle here for like all the key players in our office to get like such creatively challenging shots done, like a man who exists out of the negative space of furniture. You know, I'm proud of the rapport and the culture that we have, because I think that's the stuff that enables us to communicate how to make something really, really different and offbeat and weird like that successful. You know, Negative Spaceman, for instance, is one of my rock star artists, Peter, who, you know, we just collaborated on a couple of performances together and animated it physically, and also just shot a number of, like, he was probably the Negative Spaceman for a lot of those scenes. It was his silhouette that we helped like meld into there. And, you know, we did that with a couple of others too, for some of the, you know, other complementary shots that went along with it. And I don't think that would really be possible without us having a good respect for each other's talent and communication style, and just drive, just ownership of the work that we're doing. And I think I'm going to go with people as being my favorite success story here.
Fantastic. And what are you working on now, or what are you looking forward to working on?
I'm currently working on season 4 of Star Trek, and looking forward to, let's see, I don't know, maybe another Emmy.
Well, you deserve one.
You're getting that Kobe steak, remember?
Yes. Yes. I think
Joe.
COVID didn't get to go to LA to check out that nomination, and I was up here upstate, so I didn't really grab that steak yet.
Well, congratulations on all of your successes, and we can't wait to see what you're doing next. And thank you again for sharing your time with us this evening. Steve, what are you most proud of, either about the company or an effect in a film? And what are you working on now or looking forward to?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably proudest of the Stranger Things work we've done. I think to me that's one of my. There's something about that show that just makes me feel like a kid. You know, it reminds me of growing up and like exploring and doing all that fun BS. You know, so just working on that and doing especially season 3, we did a lot more little CG related stuff, a little more heavier comp work. So that was real fun. And hopefully Stranger Things 4, you know, we can start that soon, and maybe that will bring home an Emmy. You know, we'll see. We're not going to get into Game of Thrones anymore, so that's always a plus. But right now, we're working on just a bunch of. I'm just right now. I'm in the Netflix house. A lot of Netflix stuff. I don't know if I can say, but I think the trailer came out. Red Notice. So it's a rock movie. Another rock movie. There you go. And then we got some vampire hunting movie. So
we're a fan of those.
Like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll have to keep us in the loop on that. Thank you so much for being here tonight. You know, a lot of fans, and we definitely want to be kept up to date on everything you're working on from here on out. Last but certainly not least. Oh, yes, Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, Steve's being modest about one of the ones that your fans would probably dig a lot. He just did a ton of work on, which was Army of the Dead for Zack Snyder.
Oh, fantastic. We definitely loved that one.
Yeah, he's self-crushed, you know, a good couple hundred shots of blood and heads exploding and all sorts of great stuff. Robot zombies going short circuit and splatters everywhere. I mean, he was pretty much like single-handedly destroyed the zombies, which is.
We could do a whole nother episode just about Army of the Dead and the zombies and the effects in there. So no, that is awesome. And thanks for letting us know, because you definitely deserve a shout out for that. Chris, as the co-founder of Crafty Apes, I'll let you have the final words this evening in terms of, you know, what you're most proud of in terms of the company's accomplishments and what you're looking forward to working on next.
Yeah, I think Steve, because when we met him, he didn't know how to read, and now he can read. And no, I think I think what I'm most proud of is the two things: seeing like A-team style, seeing a plan come together. For me and my brother Tim to, be sitting in LA, 12 years ago, and having a couple drinks and like, hey man, it'd be cool, and actually seeing that to fruition, with Jason, our producer, too. But really, I think it's the opportunities we provided. My introduction to the industry was an opportunity that I probably didn't deserve and wasn't qualified for. And I think we've really maintained an open mind and provided a kind of an open pathway for people to kind of take the road less traveled, and find a way for people that you wouldn't traditionally meet some qualification to on paper they have this, on paper they have this. I mean, we recognize talent, and a lot of times it is a meritocracy. And so, like my brother Mark, he walked in with a history degree, and now is one of our top supervisors. And, Steve's brother Joe's a great story. He came to me and he said, look, Chris, I'm been solid for you. I'm like, yeah, Steve, you've been great. And he goes, so I got a twin brother. He's probably great too. I'm like, well, what does he do? He goes, he sells jeans in Pennsylvania. I'm like, huh, that's quite a qualification. And we had an interview with him, and it's VFX, so we're very informal, but his brother comes to the interview all dressed up in a tie, like I'm gonna actually like care. And he has his resume on like fancy paper, and it was cute, and now 3 years later, his brother Joe's one of our best people. And it's not pedigree, it's that he's had intense training and has the biggest thing that holds people back from success is just mere opportunity. And so I think we've been able to actually open doors for people that, I think we're open for a lot of us in different ways. And, I think it's our job to, to pass that on to people. And so I'm really forward. It is, like Leslie said, there does happen to be a lot of diversity at the company, but I'm not going to say like I'm some, we're these superheroes who's like demanded we hire, certain demographics or something. We just provided opportunities for people, and naturally, statistically, it's now filling up to be something much more even. And I think it's just about keeping an open mind towards people of all sorts of backgrounds and walks of life, no matter where they come from. And that, we always talk about that. Like, we can teach VFX, you really can't teach a work ethic and an IQ. and you can't, creativity. And so that's really what I'm proud of. Is I think we've been able to adjust a few people's existences simply by providing a good basis for it.
Absolutely. And what are you working on next that really gets you out of bed in the mornings?
Oh, I'm the soup on Salem's Lot. I'm the soup of that. And
nice.
I think with COVID in Georgia, I don't think I ever have to see Steve again. So it's like a work from home forever. No, then there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's so crazy right now. I'm a bit of a sci-fi nerd, so I'm hoping Liz lets me do a Star Trek shot soon. We've had it for 4 years now. I've never done one.
Well, fantastic. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure having you all here, and really insightful for those of us who aren't familiar with the craft of filmmaking. And you just sound like a really great company to work for. I love hearing about what you've done externally and about your company culture internally. This has been a really unique and insightful and important episode of Dissecting Horror. So thank you all again for giving me your time this evening. Panelists, stick around for just a minute. But with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everyone who joined us viewing. Thanks to my team at Dread Central, especially John Condit, who stepped in like a pro when I had to step out unexpectedly. This has been Dissecting Horror, and we'll be back again soon. Good night, everyone.